10 minutes or so into our very first session, and Wesley hit the record button. So the beginning of the first session we missed, but since then we have been recording them. And so now we've got to figure out what platform to put them on so we can make them available. But once we have figured that out, we will send out an email with that link. So if you missed any, you can see them, or if you want to share with any of your friends, you can do that. So speaking of sharing, I do want to thank you because many of you have forwarded the link to your friends, and there are quite a few people that had signed up on the registration list. So for those of you who we don't know, we're so glad you could join us. Both Michelle and I go to Capital Memorial Church in Washington, D.C., and this is part of our interest to share our passion for cooking, but not only to our church family, but our extended family and friends. So glad that you could join us. I also want to give a shout out, which I do each time, to my son Wesley, who helps us with all of the technology and gets us set up with our iPads and our phones and computers, and takes care of the weight room and handling all the technological aspects of this class. So a big shout out to him. So let me just recap. Our first class was called Clean and Simple, where we presented some recipe ideas for some very simple dishes to introduce you to plant-based cooking. It's kind of funny, when I was looking at the recipes I was doing tonight, they're actually pretty clean and simple also. So hopefully over the course of these 4 sessions, you will get a nice variety of simple and straightforward dishes, and then some more complex, various levels of flavor dishes. Then our class 2 weeks ago was called Asian Inspired. One of the things that we really appreciate is a few of you actually do try to make the dishes that we teach, and then you send us photos or share your stories. So I want to ask Wes if you can put up the photo of the 2 dishes that we had done last time. One was the spring roll, and then the other is the sapu chuka. And these dishes were made by CJ and Sue Yoon. And I was looking very closely at those spring rolls and thinking, okay, I need to go to Sue's house and take wrapping lessons from her, because those are fantastic. They look like they could be in a restaurant. So thank you so much for sharing. And then we also appreciate when you share a story that maybe didn't go so well. And so Jackie had shared with us that she tried to make that sapu chuka dish using homemade gluten. She was really adventurous and tried to make homemade gluten. But she said that didn't turn out too well. But, you know, good for you, Jackie, for giving it a try. All right, thank you, Wes. And then tonight's theme is called the 4 seasons. What defines a season? A season is defined by the temperature and by the foliage and by the plants. So by definition, what we wanted to do tonight is use a variety of vegetables and fruits which represent the different seasons of the year. So that's what is kind of a little different type of theme, not necessarily one type of ethnic dish or one type of ingredient, but to offer you some variety. Now, tonight we do have a bonus recipe. Normally we do 4 recipes. We do a salad, a vegetable, an entree, and a dessert. And tonight we're throwing in 2 salads, and one of them is kind of a vegetable, can go either way. And part of that is because when I looked at it and saw how simple these recipes were, simple meaning few ingredients. There's definitely some tips and tricks along the way, which we'll share with you. But that's why we decided to throw in that extra bonus. So let me just read through what we're going to do tonight. And again, if you are joining us for the first time, Michelle and I tag team. We have different styles. I do a live demonstration, and Michelle does a demonstration with photos and videos and voiceover to give tips on how to make the dish. So our dishes tonight are, first we're going to do a beet salad. Then Michelle will do her curried cottage pie. Then I'll do collard greens, and I will give a big shout out to Sylvia Landro on this one, because how I'm going to show you how to prep these, I learned 100% from her. Then Michelle is going to do a fruit tart, and if you had a chance to look at that recipe, my goodness, does it look delicious with all the different berries and fruit in it. And then I'm going to close it out with a corn salad, which I kind of came up with this summer by accident, because we had some leftover corn on the cob and I was trying to figure out how to use it. And it turned out to be a delicious salad, which I've made multiple times, and now buy the corn on the cob specifically for the salad. Okay, so that's what we've got on the agenda. Please remember there's a chat room. So right now everyone's on mute. We'll turn that off at the end of the class. But during the class, you can ask questions in real time. Just put them in the chat, and then Wesley will moderate that chat and interrupt Michelle or I to answer your question. Okay, so we'll try to do that in real time. We also have another feature we're going to try tonight, and that is a polling feature that Zoom has. So we have a few questions to ask you, and you'll see it when it comes up, and then we ask for your answer on that. Okay, so that's what we have got planned for this evening. So we hope you enjoy it. So the first recipe we're going to show you is beet salad. Now, Wes, if you can put up that first poll question, we'd like to know how many of you have ever cooked with fresh beets before, okay? Not canned beets, not beets from the salad bar, but actually went to the store and bought fresh beets and cooked them. So you can just answer there yes or no. And then when everyone's done polling, Wes will put up the results and we'll kind of get a feel for that.
All right, so it looks like we got 57% of you have and 43% of you have not cooked with beets before.
Okay, great. Thank you, Wes. So about half and half. So hopefully some of the tips that I share with you tonight, for those of you who have cooked with beets, maybe you'll learn something new. And for those of you who haven't, hopefully you won't be overwhelmed. The trickiest thing about cooking with fresh beets is the color and the tendency to stain things. So you do want to be careful. You don't want to use a wooden cutting board because it will stain your cutting board. Okay, so I have a plastic one. You can actually see it's a red plastic, so I don't have to worry about the red showing up. And so let me show you here. These are 3 beets that I got at the Asian market. And you can see that the greens have already been removed. There's no tops to them. So now when you go to the store, they will be in 2 forms. One is like this, in a big bin, and they'll be loose without the tops. The other time you will see them in bunches with maybe like 3 beets and all the greens attached. If you buy them that way, keep the greens, and actually you can use the recipe I'm going to show you later for collard greens using beet greens, and it will be delicious. Okay, so the first thing to do is to cook the beets, and it takes a while, but it's very simple. So find yourself a deep enough pot that you can put the beets in, fill the water so it covers the beets, and then cover the pot, boil it, and then after it comes to a boil, turn it down to medium, and then just let it cook. And depending on the size of the beets, it can take up to 45 minutes. And what I do is just every 10 or 15 minutes, I go into the pot with a fork and I stab it with a fork until the fork goes in pretty easily, kind of similarly to how you might test potatoes if you were boiling potatoes, okay? But don't be concerned if it feels like it's taking a really long time, especially if they're big. It will take time. But the sweetness that comes out in those beets for cooking so long, you will just love. All right, so that's how you cook them. So let me put this aside and show you the 2 beets that I have here that I have already cooked. So you can see they don't actually look so different, but these are all cooked and they've been cooled. Now you will notice that I didn't peel them first, and that might seem weird, but you don't need to, because once they're boiled, the peels come off so easily. So let me grab a knife here and just show you how they come off. So what I do is I cut off the two ends, okay? And then I literally just take my hands, and you can see I'm just rubbing the skin off. You don't need to do any type of peeler or anything. They will just, the skins just come right off, just like that, all done. Okay, so let me put that one aside and then do the other one. Again, I'm just gonna kind of cut that end off, and that end that I just cut off, this one, that is where the greens would be attached, okay? So it's a little rough, so you cut that off, and then again, you're just kind of rubbing it off, and they just come right off. It's so amazing. You know, cooking with vegetables, a lot of the time in cooking with vegetables is the prep time. Peeling, cutting, slicing, washing, drying. But honestly, the prep on beets is pretty easy. So again, the only tricky part is the mess. Okay, so let me move this bowl aside. Okay, so now I've got my two beets. Now, this particular recipe, and just so you know, these things are so sweet and flavorful. Honestly, you could just cut them and eat them just like this, and you would love them. In this particular recipe, though, I'm actually gonna grate them. Again, you can prep beets many ways. You can slice them, cube them, roast them, but this one, I'm gonna grate them. Now, you can grate them two ways. One is you can use a regular box grater. Now, as you can imagine, it will get messy, so you probably want to do it near the sink. But I prefer, probably because I'm lazy, to use my food processor, which has a grating disc. Okay, so I'm going to show you how that works. Maybe if I can just show you on the camera here, the grating disc, okay? My grating disc has two sides, one a big grate and then the other a small grate. And I'm gonna use the big grate, okay? Because I want it to have some depth to it. So I'm gonna put the grating disc on. Now, the other tip I will say for using a food processor is, even though you don't need to do it to do the grating, you want to cut your beets up into chunks. And the reason is because you don't want really long strands of grates. You just want, you know, small to medium grains of grates. So if I stuck this whole beet in, which I could do, it's going to grate along that whole side and end up with a long string. But I prefer, then it almost looks like, you know, spaghetti or something. But I don't want that texture. I want it to be short. So I'm actually just going to take the beets and cut them into small chunks like this, okay? And again, I'm just doing this because of the size and texture that I want in the food processor. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so now I'm gonna take them, the chunks, stick them in here. And I will share with you guys, this and my Vitamix are my favorite kitchen tools. And sorry, like I said, it gets messy. This one I did a lot of research. I had a Cuisinart no, actually not Cuisinart, it was KitchenAid. I had a KitchenAid food processor for about 10 or 15 years. It was old, it just wasn't doing exactly what I wanted to do. And I did a lot of research. I found this wonderful YouTube video where this woman compared 3 different food processors, and she had like 5 different ingredients and showed each ingredient, how the food processor would process it. And at the end, this particular one, this brand is called Breville, did the best on all the ingredients. And so I bought it. It was an investment, but I've been really, really happy with it. So if you cook a lot and you're looking to make that type of investment, I would recommend this one. Okay, so let me turn this on and you will see how fast this goes because they're soft, okay? Okay, that's it. I'll do the rest. And then all the prep is done. Okay. just put those in the sink. And then I'll show you what this looks like. Now, I'm going to mix it in this silver bowl, but you'll see later I'll actually serve it in a different bowl. But just for prepping, I'll do it here. All right, so let me put these here, and you'll see they're all grated. They're not too long. The strands are not too long. You can see it's just such a beautiful magenta color. I mean, I've made beets many times, and I will have to tell you, I actually really do need to give a shout out to my mother-in-law. In fact, she walked through here a few minutes ago. I should have put her on camera because this is her recipe. So I can't take credit for this recipe. She taught this to me. She's made this for years and years and years. My husband Mel just loves it, and very simple, very flavorful. Okay, so the next ingredient is a plant-based mayonnaise. Now there's different ones out there. Wes, if you could put up that slide, I want to show you 3 different brands. I'm sure there's more. The first one that's up there is called Just Mayo, which to me is kind of a weird name because to me it makes it sound like it is mayonnaise, but it is plant-based. I know Whole Foods sells this brand, and I will tell you, of the different brands I've tried, to me, this one tastes the most like Hellmann's, which is my preferred mayonnaise brand, okay? The next one, Vegenaise, that's been around for years and years. For those of you who eat plant-based, you're probably very familiar with that, pretty easy to find. And then the third one is actually relatively new. Hellmann's now is making a vegan mayonnaise as well. So lots of different options. You'll be able to find something at Giant or Safeway, or if you go to a Whole Foods or some type of health food store, you'll be able to find it, okay? Now, how much you put in really is totally up to you. So my husband and I have this argument. I tend to just like a little bit, and he tends to like more, okay? So my tip to you is start with a little bit. So I'm just gonna put in that, and even that probably was too much, okay? Next, we're gonna put in some lemon juice. Now, you can use bottled lemon juice is just fine, but if you can do fresh lemons, it does add a little bit more of a tang to it, and just brings out that fresh flavor, okay? And I can see I'm not paying attention and the seeds are falling in, okay? I'm trying to squeeze it over my hand so that I catch the seeds, okay? All right, there we've got our lemon. And then the last ingredients are salt and pepper. Like I said, pretty clean and simple. And this type of cooking, I just do a lot of testing and tasting. So you can see I don't really have exact measurements. So I'll put the ingredients in, take a little taste, add a little bit. So when it comes to mayonnaise and salt and pepper, you know, go light at first, and then give it a taste. Now, if you look here, as I'm mixing it, now you see the color is changing from magenta to pink. And it's so pretty. So for me, this is enough mayonnaise. Like I said, if Mel were making it, he'd put in more. So you just put in what you like. If you like the flavor of mayonnaise, then put more in. Otherwise, just a little bit to give it a creamy texture. All right, and the last tip on this dish is, because it's so beautiful, you want to serve it in a white bowl so that that color shows up. So I just brought a white bowl here, and I want to put that in there. You can see how pretty that looks. Now, this is, we've deemed for what we're doing tonight, this as a fall recipe, because the peak season for beets is September through October. But the reality is where we live, and because there's food import and export from not only different states, but different countries, most of the vegetables we can get year round. But if you're buying fresh, say from a farmer's market, the peak season is kind of that early fall season for beets. But this dish is delicious all year round. So I'm glad you enjoyed that. And again, just a reminder as I hand it over to Michelle, if you have any questions during either of our presentations, to use the chat room. So with that, Michelle, over to you.
Great. Well, it's nice to see everybody. We are going to go to the fall, continue our journey into fall. And I just need to be able to share my screen.
Is it not letting you, Michelle?
No.
Right now?
All right, great. So I'm gonna take you through my curried cottage pie. So as many of you, some of you may know, I have some British roots in my family. My dad was born in Jamaica and grew up in Jamaica, and so many generations ago, there's some ancestors that left the UK. We think Scotland, but probably somewhere Scotland, North England, and moved to Jamaica. And I have many folks from the Caribbean migrated to England, and so a very dear aunt of mine lives in the UK now, and shepherd's pie is one of their yummy dishes, and it's basically like a meat pie filling with potatoes on top. So shepherd's pie refers to lamb. A cottage pie refers to beef. You have ground beef and a stew, and top it with mashed potatoes. So this is my take on cottage pie for fall with a bit of a twist. And so I'm calling it curried cottage pie. And I don't like to spend, well, I enjoy spending time in the kitchen, chopping and putting things together, but sometimes I love having a dish that you can just throw together and you don't have to spend a lot of time foraging for the ingredients. So it's a long ingredient list if you looked at the list. So what we're going to use tonight in our cottage pie, this is our entree. So we're going to have some unflavored textured vegetable protein, some lentils, some rolled oats, some roasted and salted cashews, or if you're Julie, you can just leave them out. And for the eagle-eyed among you, you will notice that I have the can of cashew nuts, but they're actually not cashews in the cans. The cashews came later. So anyway, just this is a representation. We have diced chilies, a can of diced chilies, a medium onion chopped. We have a can of coconut milk, a jar of marinara sauce, a tablespoon of curry powder, whatever curry powder you want to use. I'm using my Aunt Lynette's curry. She's the aunt that lives in the UK, and boy, is this curry spicy. So anyway, it's delicious. And a bag of frozen mixed vegetables, a bag of frozen potato puffs, some turkey or French fried onions for crunch on the top. So this is our list. And then if you want to serve it with vegan sour cream or plain yogurt, you can. If you're not vegan, you can use regular sour cream or regular yogurt. All right, so that's what we're starting with. So this is easy. You can mix it in the pan that you're going to bake the dish in. And so here I'm using a half size steam table pan, like a 9 by 13 or 9 by 14 pan, or a lasagna roast pan. Just dump everything here. So if you can see the mixed vegetables, the lentils, the chili tomatoes, the nuts, the onions, the garlic, everything is here. Add the coconut milk and the tomato sauce, and then stir it up. Just make sure that everything's incorporated. It's going to look really soupy. A tip, because I don't like to waste the sauce and coconut milk, what I would do is add about 3/4 of a cup or 3/4 of the can of coconut milk. Once you dump out the coconut milk, add water to that can and kind of rinse out the remaining coconut milk that's clinging to the side of the can, and then take that water, dump it into the jar of the marinara sauce, and swish it around there, so you can get rid of the get all of the sauce, and then add that water to your mixture. And actually, it's a good idea to add just a tiny bit more water. So then you just top it with the frozen tots. What I would do is take the frozen tots out so that they kind of thaw a little bit, and then you can kind of crush them up. Here you can add as much as you want or as little as you want. I have a 16-ounce bag. This is the whole bag. And then add the French fried onions on top. And so again, you can be as generous or as skimpy as you want to be. So then cover your dish, push it in an oven at 350, and leave it alone for about an hour. This will give time for the TBP and the lentils to cook in the sauce. At the end of an hour, take the foil off, and you'll see that it's starting to bubble a little bit. And then I would leave it in the oven again 15 to 20 minutes until the top is really nice and golden brown. I think this is a little too light still. So I left it in for about 20 minutes and took it out, and there it was. So I would let it cool for maybe 10 minutes before serving. But this is a kind of a one-dish meal. But with the salads, the sides, I was telling Lisa earlier today that if we were together cooking, that this would be a really, really nice meal to share. So I would serve it with, a little bit of sour cream or yogurt on top. I used yogurt because this has curry in it, so the yogurt, that tang of the yogurt, kind of offsets the spice and the heat of the curry. But sour cream would do that just as well. And that is it. Set a table and enjoy this with your family and friends. So back to you, Lisa, for the collards. We're waiting. We've got the cottage pie. We're waiting for the collards.
Real quick, Michelle, a couple of questions. I'm pretty sure when you said potato puffs, you did mean tater tots, correct? Same idea.
Same thing. Tater tots, potato puffs.
And the second one is there anything you could substitute instead of using the oats?
Yeah, you could leave the oats out. I had put the oats in sort of to kind of thicken I didn't want it so soupy. So the cottage pie came out a little bit more like a casserole. So it's not completely dry, but it holds together. So it's not very soupy. If you took the oats out, I think you would have maybe a little bit more of you can have a little more gravy, so to speak. So you can take the oats out. You can use steel cut oats, or you could use rice, or you could, add more TBP or more lentils, or just leave it off. This pie is quite forgiving. Most of our cooking is pretty forgiving. You can add a little more, take a little off. So I have a tablespoon of curry powder for this dish, and that's pretty strong, but it can also depend on how old your spices are. So you adjust it for your own family's palate. Um, a tablespoon might be too much. You might want to dial it back a little bit. This is also a great dish that you can throw into a slow cooker, crock pot. I think you could probably do it very quickly in an Instant Pot. I have an Instant Pot, but I haven't tried this recipe in that. So it's definitely one that if I was doing this, I've done something similar in a crock pot, and I would just mix everything together and set it in a crock pot for probably 3 hours or so, and I think the flavors actually meld really nicely if you let it stew for a longer period of time. But it's just as easy to kind of mix it all up and bake it. If you used cooked lentils, you wouldn't have to bake it as long. The hour is really just to help the dry lentils, cook through. So if you used a can of cooked lentils, then you could probably have this dish done in half an hour.
All right, thank you, Michelle.
Great.
So Michelle, you were talking about the amount of curry in that recipe. And I'm thinking a tablespoon for that whole dish, that whole casserole, that doesn't seem like very much to me. So it either means one, I just really like the taste of curry, or two, maybe my curry is too old. So I'll have to maybe buy some new curry and test that out. So thank you very much for that really creative dish. I love one pot dishes, just love it. Where you can kind of mix and cook and serve all in the same dish. So thank you for sharing that. So our next dish to share with you is collard greens. And again, if you missed my intro, I want to give a shout out to Sylvia Leandro, who also goes to Capital Memorial Church. And many, many years ago, she had made this big dish of collard greens for potluck. And to be frank, I don't know that I had ever even eaten collard greens before that day. And I just fell in love with this dish, and I started asking around, who made these? What is it? So I found out it was Sylvia. I went back to the kitchen. I'm like, how did you do this? Because it was just totally different than what you usually think about when you think of greens, visually and texture and taste. So my flavors might be a little bit different than hers, but the cutting technique is 100% from Sylvia. So this is how simple this recipe is. We have collard greens, we've got some fresh garlic, and we've got salt and pepper and olive oil. That's it. All right. So the trick is all in the cutting. So let me show you that first.
While you're doing that, I'm going to throw the poll up to see how many people have.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I forgot. Yes. We had a poll. Same as with the beets. Thank you, Wesley. How many of you have cooked fresh collard greens before?
Still getting a couple more. One sec. All right, so it looks like almost everybody has.
Okay.
Has not.
Awesome. Very good. So maybe this will be something you have already cooked like this, or maybe it will be something different. Okay, so here I've got my bunch of collard greens. And this is the trick for cutting. Put the leaf out here. Now, whatever you're more comfortable with, I'm more comfortable just using the knife and I'm cutting the rib out. Or if you want, you can pull the leaves off. But I think it's my type A personality. I just would rather cut it and have them be even. And I just find it quicker. So with each leaf, and you can see they're easy to work with because they're flat. If for those of you who joined our first class where we did kale, Kale is a little more tricky to handle because of all the curls in the leaves. So it takes a little more patience, a little more tedious, but because these are flat, it's easy. And the other interesting thing about collard greens is how the size of the leaves can vary so much. So the bunch I have right now, these I would say are probably medium-sized leaves. I mean, but I've seen, especially like at a farmer's market, where leaves are, you know, even bigger than this cutting board here. But how we're gonna prep them, it kind of doesn't matter because we're gonna cut them all down. All right, so a little more cutting here. And you notice I haven't washed them yet, okay? Because I find that it's easier to wash them after I've cut rather than dealing with washing all these big leaves of different sizes. And with the recipe, how we're gonna do it, we don't need to dry them. Actually, the moisture helps with this cooking method. And if you ever see a leaf that doesn't look so healthy, just put it aside. Like I've got one here that's kind of yellow and looks a little thick. So I'm just gonna put that one aside and not use it. Just got a few more to go here. And then we'll be ready to cut them. Two more. Okay, now once all the ribs are cut off, let's put all those guys aside. All right, now I'm left with this pile of leaves, okay? So what you want to do with this big pile of leaves is get one of the larger leaves on the outside, and you're just gonna roll them up tight like this, okay? Roll them up, and now you're gonna make little tiny cuts, like maybe 1/4 of an inch. Again, don't worry, it doesn't have to be perfect. When this cooks up, you just won't notice. So I had rolled all the leaves up into one big roll, and now I'm cutting them. About 1/4 of an inch. If you want, you can even do it thinner. All right, there. Now, remember, I haven't washed them yet. So over here, I've got a large bowl of water, and I'm gonna throw them in the bowl of water. And if you remember the tip from our first class, that the best way to wash greens is in a big bowl of water, swish it around with your hands, let it sit there for a few minutes, and any of the dirt will will sink to the bottom, because the leaves always float. That's just the easiest way to wash greens. So I'm gonna let that sit there for a minute while I do the garlic. So for that big bunch of greens, I'm actually gonna use 4 cloves of garlic, which may seem like a lot, but after they cook for a while, it'll just be perfect flavor. It won't be too strong. And I'm just kind of pressing them to kind of break it down so that I can get the skins off easily. Okay. So I'm going to peel the 4 of these, and then after they're peeled, then you can do one of 2 things. You can just take a knife and cut them up very small, mince them. Actually, today I'm going to use a garlic press to show you that cool tool. Now, when you use the press, one thing you may not know about garlic, when you use the press versus cutting, it actually makes it stronger because it breaks the walls down of the garlic, and it becomes a stronger flavor if you use a press versus cut. So if you prefer not a strong garlic flavor, then use a knife and just cut them up very small. Okay, so I've got those. And now let me show you how this handy dandy press works. And this guy, I've had a garlic press for many years, but this one is OXO, which I bought recently, and I bought it specifically because it can handle 2 or 3 cloves at the same time. I'm all about doing things quickly. All right, and that's it. Okay, now the next step is to do the cooking, but because of our camera setup, I can't really do it on the stove. So I heated up the pan. I'm going to show you how to put things in the pan. And then while Michelle does her next recipe, I'll actually cook them during that time. All right, so here's the pan I'm going to use. So I'm really into big kitchen things. So you can see this giant bowl. This is actually a 14-inch fry pan. I don't know why, I just find it easier to cook when there's more space. So even though you do not need a fry pan this big, you will see the collard greens shrink down quite a bit. So a normal 12-inch fry pan is just fine. It's just kind of my thing. All right. So what you're going to do, you heat up the pan. Actually, my pan is hot. On the stove, and then you add some olive oil. Okay, and you just wait maybe a minute, and you'll see the olive oil, if it's on the stove, it'll get shimmery. So now it's ready. And then you put in the garlic. Now, you want to be very, very careful when you're cooking the garlic. We'll just pretend I'm on the stove here. Just constantly move it around in the oil. And just when you can start smelling that wonderful odor of garlic, of warm garlic, that's when you want to add the collards. The last thing you want to do is burn your garlic because it completely changes the flavor, okay? But you want that heat from the oil to bring out the fragrance. Once you can start smelling it, you're ready to go with the collards. Now, remember I said we don't have to dry these because actually in this cooking method, you want a little bit of water. We're kind of doing a combination of sauteing and steaming at the same time. So I'm literally just going to pull them out of the bowl and stick them in. Now, if you were doing this on the stove, it would start to sizzle because of the heat. And then let me just get rid of this bowl here. Is I would add a little bit of water, maybe like half a cup, okay? And you're going to stir it around while you're putting it in. And after you've got the garlic and the oil all covering the leaves, okay, then we want to add our salt and pepper. Right, mix it around. Then after you've got that all mixed, a little water in there, then what you want to do is you want to kind of keep it on medium and then cover it. Right? So I'm going to put it on the stove and let it cook while Michelle is doing the next dish. So that when we come back, I'll show you what it looks like cooked. All right? And that is it for the collard greens. 5 simple ingredients: the greens, garlic, olive oil, salt, and pepper. And the key, the secret to this recipe is how to cut the collard greens. So thank you, Sylvia, for teaching me this great trick. Okay, Michelle, over to you.
Speaking of cutting the collard greens, quick question came in from Jackie, which is, what kind of knife do you have?
Oh, let me talk about my knife. So there is this magazine I used to subscribe to called Cooks Illustrated. And what's interesting, a lot of the magazine, there's a lot of meat recipes, which I don't use, but this magazine is filled with really cool kitchen tips and equipment reviews. And the reason I bought this knife was because of the review that I had read. This brand is called Victorinox, Victor, Victorinox. And the reason I bought this is because it is very reasonably priced. And even at that, Cooks Illustrated said it was the best. So if you've ever done knife shopping, you know, a knife like this can be upwards of $200, $250. And when they did the knife comparison test, they compared this against that level of knives. This one's only $25, and I bought it on Amazon, and I've had it for many years and very happy with it. I have a very simple knife sharpener that I use to keep it sharp. So thank you for asking, Jackie, because having a good knife is actually the most important thing when you're cooking, but you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a good knife. So thanks for that question.
Carrie Ann also chimed in, and she said, no worries about the large pan. Her mom uses one like that all the time as well.
Oh, I'm in good company with June. Awesome.
All right, Michelle, we'll turn it over to you.
Very good. Well, time for dessert. We are going to make a spring fresh fruit tart, or like I like to call it, a celebration fruit tart. And so here is, share my screen. So the story behind this fruit tart, I always loved fruit berry tarts, you know, just a little bit of custard and a pie shell and then loads of fruits. But 2 years ago, when I was diagnosed with diabetes, it was a month before my birthday. And when my friends came to celebrate, they brought me a fruit tart that was amazing. And so this is a little bit of my riff, my take on this celebration fruit tart, and that I want to share with you today. So here are the ingredients. Again, a long list, but there are a lot of substitutions that you can make. So I have here a non-dairy cream cheese, a non-dairy milk, vanilla extract, lemon extract or lemon zest, rum extract, a sweetener of your choice, a pinch of salt, sliced bananas, sliced strawberries, blackberries, raspberries, blueberries, some jam or jelly, and this is optional, and a graham cracker pie crust. And you can use a chocolate one like you see or a regular one, and then some whipped topping. So this is our grocery list. So as I said, there are a few things that you can substitute. So I wanted to highlight here, there are a number of sweetener options that you can use. So since I'm trying to cut down on sugar, I used stevia for the sweetener, but you could use coconut sugar, regular sugar, maple syrup if you don't want to use any refined sugar. And then here you can see you have a choice of graham cracker crust, pie crust. You can make your own, you can buy. Most of the, you check, some of the pie crusts have honey in them, which is not count. Many vegans won't eat honey. So anyway, just read the ingredients. And then the flavoring. Vanilla is key. The rum extract, it's a nice addition. And what I discovered is that the tofutti cream cheese has a little bit of a beany taste to it. And so I didn't quite like that. It was a little strong, even with the vanilla and the rum extract. And unfortunately reminded me a little bit of the smell of Play-Doh. So but that's my taste. So, and I couldn't find any other plant-based cream cheese. So I don't know if it varies. So I decided to add a little bit of lemon. I had lemon extract, so I added lemon extract. If you have lemon zest, I think that would be really, really good. But the lemon actually adds a nice citrus flavor, and lemon and berries go together so well. So I think I would just keep it regardless. So those are some of the options. Now, the first thing you do is to make your custard base. So in a food processor, I just blended the cream cheese, the non-dairy milk, the flavorings, the sweeteners, and a little bit of salt. You always want to put a little bit of salt in your dessert, especially these kind of no-bake desserts, because it brings out the sweetness. So you can actually make things a little sweeter without using more sugar. So I blend this until it's smooth, and it's a nice kind of custard. And then slice your fruit. Slice a banana, slice a cup of strawberries. Here are my friends prepping the berries for the pie that they made for me. Now, put the custard down. In the recipe, I said put the banana slices down first, and when I actually put the recipe together, I put the custard down first. So doesn't matter, pie police, sorry. It's not a big deal if you put the custard first and then the bananas, or the bananas first and then the custard. Just up to you. So I put the custard down first, and then I put the sliced banana, and this is just one banana on top. If you like bananas, you can put more, or if you don't like this custard bit, you can just take it, you can omit it entirely. And this is what my friends did. They just piled the bananas in the bottom of the pie crust, and that was the kind of custard base. So anyway, this is the other tip that you can use for this pie. So then I layered the strawberries on top of the bananas, put the blackberries on top of the strawberries. And again, you're getting this, it's the contrasting red and blue, purple colors just to pile your pie. And then I added the raspberries. So this is about a cup of blackberries, a cup of kind of a heaping cup of raspberries. And essentially what I did was I just took the half pints that you buy at the store, and if you pick out the one or two kind of overripe berries that usually are in these boxes, you end up with about a cup. And so this is what it looks like. And then I added a cup of blueberries on top. So here we are, and this pie is good enough to eat right now. But if we want to spiff it up a little bit more and add more sugar, which you don't need to do, take 2 tablespoons of a jelly, an apple jelly, a kind of a clear, mild jelly. Apple jelly works. Apricot jam works. I had strawberry, some strawberry jam. So I just warmed it over in the microwave to kind of make it a liquid. And then you just brush it on top of the berries. And that gives it this kind of bakery shine. So if you are having, if you want to serve this for company and kind of jazz it up, then you can serve it just like this. It's nice and glistening and good to go. So, time for dessert. Hooray. But I think there still is something missing. And I would say, if you want to really jazz it up, pile some whipped cream on top. You can serve it, slice it, and put a dollop of whipped cream, or you can just pile it on the pie and present it to your guests as this delicious, lovely, sweet, but not more naturally sweet, not terribly overly sweet celebration pie. And that's ingredients for a delicious kind of low sugar fruit tart.
Thanks, Michelle. A couple of people agreed that if you put the bananas, like you said, on the bottom, they'll actually be less likely to brown.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much. We'll move on.
I always wondered the trick for those fruit pies, how to make them glossy. because when you go to, say, Whole Foods or a store that sells those fruit pies, those are glossy. And I never knew how they did that. I always thought it was Jell-O, but you can do it with some jelly or jam. So awesome, awesome tip. Definitely looks like a delicious and easy tart to make. So our final recipe tonight, while the collards are still cooking behind me, is really a quintessential summer salad, because the three key ingredients are fresh corn on the cob, fresh tomatoes, and basil, which are all just perfect summer ingredients. However, it's not summer, but I'm still going to do this salad, and you can get all those ingredients, like I said earlier, pretty much all year round. So I'm actually going to use the packaged corn, which generally probably most people kind of stay away from. But I've actually had pretty good success with packaged corn on the cob. So that's what I'm using tonight. So the recipe I'm going to use uses 4 of these. And the first thing to do is steam the corn. Now, again, this is a salad recipe, so we want the corn cold. So you do this ahead of time. So I'm going to show you the trick for steaming the corn. So I had another poll. See, I forgot. Okay, Wes, that third poll. And this question is, what is your preferred method for cooking corn? To boil it, to steam it, or to grill it? We just thought it'd be fun to have a little interaction here and get you to participate during our session.
All right, it looks like we got a tie between boiled and steamed, and
Okay.
grilled is the lowest one with only 1 vote.
Okay, all right, boil and steam. So what I'm going to do tonight is steam. It's just the way my mom taught me, and I've always done it. I don't know, honestly, taste-wise, if there's really much different between boil and steam. I just find the steam a little easier. All right, so here I've got a pot, and in the pot I have got one of these handy dandy steamer baskets. And my shout out to this goes to Wesley, because he bought this for me for Christmas many years ago. And I love this guy because it's plastic. So it doesn't get hot. It's easy to clean, easy to handle, and it fits in all size pans. So you put about 1 inch of water on the bottom and stick the basket. Then I'm going to open up this package here and show you how simply this goes. Is just stick your cobs in the basket. Again, there's about 1 inch of water under there. Put the top on. Once it comes to a boil, just leave it in for about 5 minutes. You do not need to do it very long. Corn cooks really quickly, okay? You don't want to cook it too long. It gets too starchy. You just want to cook it long enough so that when you poke the fork in, you feel that little pop when you poke the fork into the corn. So about 5 minutes, right? So that's how you prep it. Let me put this aside and bring my plate over here of prepped corn that I've got, that I cooked earlier. So it's already cooled. And now what we're going to do is cut the kernels off the cob. Now, you'd want to kind of cut it in such a way that some of the kernels stay together. I know that there are some nifty tools where you can like pull all the kernels off separately. But in this recipe, you kind of want to keep some together so you can take a bite into a piece of corn kernels. All right, so let me grab my bowl. Here it is. All right, and I'm going to use the same big knife, okay? And I'm just cutting down like this, and you can see how the corn kernels have all stayed together. Now, we're not going to leave them like that because you don't want something that big. So in a minute, I'll show you what we're going to do with the big pieces. And I'll tell you, I mentioned at the very beginning when I was doing the welcome, for any of you that were not here, is how I came up with this recipe was kind of by accident. It was one day earlier this summer where we had cooked a lot of corn on the cob. We had gotten it at Spitnose Market in Beltsville, and it was just delicious corn on the cob, but I had extras. And I don't know why, but eating leftover corn on the cob just isn't so appealing to me. And I was looking at it. I'm like, okay, what if I just, it was cold. It had been in the refrigerator. Let me just cut it up and see if I can make a salad out of it. And it was a big hit and pretty simple. All right, so let's go take a look back here on the cutting board. And I've got all the pieces. And now what I'm going to do, because many of these are too long, is I'm just going to take the knife and cut. So I've got like 1-inch pieces. You can see I'm not being too particular here. That's about it. That'll do. Okay, and so now I'm going to put these in a bowl. So that's my first ingredient. The second ingredient is grape tomatoes. Now I like the grape tomatoes the best because they're sweet and they're nice in salads because there's not a lot of liquid or seeds in them, and they're easy to handle. So I've got a small box here of grape tomatoes. I've already washed them. You can cut them, you can slice them, you can cut them in half, but I want to show you a trick that I learned on YouTube that makes me so happy to do this trick. And this trick works for grape tomatoes, for grapes, and for olives. And I've used it for all three. And that is a very quick and easy, again, I'm into quick, way to cut all these things in half quickly. So the little magic tool is this Ziploc container. Let me put it under the camera here so you can see it. It's a plastic container that you can get at any grocery store in the aisle where they sell, Tupperware or whatever Rubbermaid stuff. But what's unique about it is it's got a screw top, okay? So I have several of these things. So I'm actually going to use 2 tops for this trick. Okay, so I'm going to take my tomatoes. Again, you can do this with grapes and olives as well. Kind of pack them in there tight. Then put the other top on top and then kind of push down. And then, I think you can see this okay. The big knife that I was using will fit right between there. And I'm going to go like this. And voila, I have cut all those tomatoes in half. Look how beautiful. So quick. So little things like that make me very happy. So in 2 slices, I'm going to get all these tomatoes cut and put in the salad. So if any of you do a lot of salad making, salads take time with all the cutting. So if you can find any type of tip to make it a little quicker, it's wonderful. All right, give me 1 second. I just want to check these guys here. They're looking pretty good. Okay, I'm actually going to turn that off because the water that I put in there is now cooked off, and I'll show those to you in a minute. All right, so I've got the corn and the tomatoes. The next ingredient is basil. So I have washed and dried about a dozen basil leaves, and I'm going to cut the basil using the same technique that I used for the collard greens, okay? But obviously much, much smaller. I think this is called chiffonade. Sorry, I didn't go to culinary school, so I can't remember exactly. But again, these leaves were whole. I didn't cut the leaves before I did this. And I rolled them up and cut them into these little ribbons. So we'll add that to the salad. Okay. And then the last ingredient is some red onion. And I'm just going to use a little piece here. Just kind of eyeball it. I just cut off a small piece on the end. Now for me, the trick about putting onions in salads is to cut them small, okay? So I'm gonna cut them very, very small because it's not very pleasant to take a bite of a salad and then get a giant bite of onion. But if they're cut very small, then it can add flavor without ruining the bite. And if after you cut it, you decide, I think that's too much, I don't want that much, just use what you want. All right. So that's, in fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to use all of it. I feel like about half of that is enough. Okay. So in the bowl, I've got the corn. You got to just, here, let's do this picture. I don't know, that just makes me so happy. All those bright colors. The bright yellow, the bright red, the bright green, and then the purple. So it's a great flavor and just looks beautiful. And the dressing is very simple. This is actually the same dressing I used on the kale salad the first night. Okay, a little olive oil, a good quality white balsamic vinegar. If you're not familiar with white balsamic, it has a sweet taste to it. It is not a strong vinegary taste, so it's a very, very pleasant taste. Some salt and some pepper. And I'll just grab a spoon here, stir it up. And that's the salad. So yummy. Mel asked me earlier, Mel's my husband, he said, hey, are we gonna have any food at the end of tonight? And I said, yes, we will. So we'll definitely enjoy that. And before I just kind of hand it over to Michelle, I just wanna show you the collards. Now that they're all cooked here. Okay, and that's what they look like when they're cooked, right? You can see that they have kind of turned a darker green, and all the water's cooked out, which is what you want, so they kind of have a drier look to them. You've got the garlic in there and the salt and pepper, and it's just a delicious side dish, like Michelle said, really a very nice accompaniment to a casserole like the one that she made. So that's it for that represented, I think collards, that was our winter theme, because I learned the prime season for collards is January, February timeframe. So with that, let me hand it back to Michelle.
Wait, let me steal the mic real quick.
Okay.
Had a couple of questions and one suggestion to add to the poll, which was microwave the corn. That we had a couple of people agree that that was a quick and easy and efficient way to cook them.
Okay, good tip.
Also, Jackie wants to know, have you ever tried using the corn raw in a salad or this particular salad?
You know, Jackie, I think I have. I think I have had raw corn. I do like it. So yeah, that's definitely an option. I would say for that, definitely, you know, let it be fresh corn that you've bought at the farmer's stand. Versus the package may not be so good raw, but definitely that prime summer corn would be good raw also. Good tips.
And then one last thing, which is we should be ready for a couple of visitors. Carrie Ann's coming over tomorrow to pick up all this food.
Yes, please come. I miss you.
All right, we'll turn it over to Michelle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this has been a fun experiment in teamwork and cooking and just doing stuff that we already love. So we have one more class after this. It'll be in 2 weeks, October 20. And our last class is beans and nuts. It's just coincidental that it is 2 days before the last presidential debate, but we're cooking beans and nuts. At least 4 dishes. Working our beans and nuts 4 ways. So join us for that. Invite your friends. And I think we can go off mute. And
yeah, I'll let everyone unmute themselves now.
Yeah. Thanks again to Wes for production, directing.
Yeah, great job, Wes.
Yeah.
No problem. Look, I didn't have to cook at all. This is the best cooking show ever. I don't do anything.
Thank you, Wes.
This was awesome, guys.
Thank you. Lisa.
I'm glad you guys liked it.
Oh,
You guys you're
so
both
good.
naturals, you know, you're so good at this. You're so relaxed and you explain everything as you're doing it. It all looks so easy.
Yeah, exactly. You should come over here and see how sweaty I am.
You look cool though. You couldn't tell at all. Also, Lisa, I made your the recipe from the first week, that lasagna on Sunday. It was so good.
Awesome.
It was so good.
It's so fun for us when you guys share that you've tried these recipes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
made the
our
kale
mom loves
salad.
it.
I made
Yeah.
the kale salad earlier and we had a little bit of it left over and it was just still delicious.
Yes,
Few days
yes. No,
later.
that's a really good point, Jackie. The kale salad can last several days, whereas most salads don't.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I made the unlasagna as well, and
Uh-huh.
it turned out fantastic. And the kale salad, mushing all of the kale, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
That was a great tip.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, that tip was from my mom. She taught me that tip. She
All right,
says,
Mom.
you need to massage the kale.
Well, we did.
Me too.
Awesome. Very cool.
Where did you say you say you got that white